Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on our webinar Behind the Mask. I thought it would be useful to wrap up the year with this event so that we could basically think about 2020, reflect on what a year it's been, what a pig of a year, and before you all go off and have your Christmas break and think about what you want to achieve as an employer in 2021 and all the changes that you want to make, just give you some pointers really to think about as you approach the Christmas break. So, what's going on behind your mask? For those of you that don't know me, I'm Nikki Eleanor. I'm an employment lawyer and I'm a protector of employers. And what that means is that I get to hear what's going on behind your mask when you're feeling at your most vulnerable and where you really need to share your frustrations. And some of the common complaints that I hear are, why can't they give a shit? Why can't they behave? Why can't they perform? Go the extra mile? Just do their job, stop moaning, leave. Why can't they just leave? But you can insert your own frustrations here. I get it. I get it that actually when times are tough for everybody, employers and employees, that there is a mask that you guys have to adopt in order to present the employer that you feel you should be or that you must be. And there'll be times where you're saying to your staff, yes, I really I care about your feelings and your worries and your stresses and your anxieties, but behind closed doors you're screaming and shouting in your head thinking, but I've got some work to do and I just need you to do your job. So I completely get it that yes, it's very important that we look after our employees, and we respect the fact that they've got rights and that means you've got responsibilities. But I also appreciate that as employers, that can cause significant frustration for you. So what I'm planning on doing today is taking you through an exercise where you can let it all out. You can write down all of the frustrations that are really, really at top of your list of issues that you wish you could say, things that you wish you could say, and things that you wish you could change. And then at the end of it, I'll go through some scenarios to share with you that perhaps some other employers are feeling, and just see if you identify with any of those, and leave you with some handy hints for considerations if any of those do ring true for you, and you want to put a plan in place for next year, how to go about doing that. So we're scheduled to run for an hour, but I think my talking will be over and done with in sort of 30 to 40 minutes. So you've got an opportunity to ask any questions that you want to ask during the webinar. And at the end, myself and my lovely team will be able to kind of go through those questions with you and provide some answers to your particular situations. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen if you want to pop your questions in there, and we'll have a look at the end. So yes, as I mentioned, Christmas time is a really common time to reflect on what's happened over this last year. Perhaps revisit the goals that you'd set for the year, and it's easy to kind of feel a bit downhearted in terms of not achieving those goals. But you have to be kind to yourself. You have to take into account the effect of the pandemic on you, your family, your business, and your team. And really, I'd challenge you to step back and think, what's driving your thoughts? Is this coming from a place of sort of objectivity, or really is there a kind of bitterness and resentment behind your thoughts? And perhaps is that driven by what's happened to your business, in that you've made a loss this year, maybe? Is that really your employees' fault? And so I'm asking you to take a breath and work out, where your thoughts are coming from, what's driving them. And I think it's really important that before you take any action on the basis of your thoughts, consider your options very, very carefully. I think it's really important to take advice and understand your responsibilities. Make a risk assessment, and as they say, measure twice and cut once. if you are going to make some changes in the new year. So just question, where your emotions and thoughts are right now. And, is it really the best time for you to be making changes? So where do we begin? So I think we begin right here, right now. So if you've got a pen and paper handy, I'd like you to write down what your biggest frustration is with your staff. You know what it is, just write it down. You've got 1 minute to yourself to just kind of scribble out. If I had a magic wand and I could fix one issue for you in your business right now, what would it be? Let it all out. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Okay, so I don't know whether that was just the start of an essay, and if you want to continue that long list of frustrations after this video, then by all means, you're more than welcome to do so. But once you've identified what that number one issue is, I really want you to ask yourself, why are you avoiding dealing with it? It could be because you're afraid to do that. It's something that you've put up with for a long time and you feel like you've missed your opportunity to deal with it. Is it going to cost too much? Is it going to make you unpopular? Just really sort of question why you're avoiding dealing with that one issue. Also consider, what workarounds have you put in place? So, have you got an employee that has a terrible attitude, but rather than actually dealing with their attitude, you've moved them to another department? That's so common. But if you think about, what have you put in place in your business to work around this person? So, it could be that you've told them at appraisals how fantastic they are, but the reality is that they're massively underperforming. The workaround could be, what you're actually saying to them versus what you're actually thinking and feeling. So I just want you to think about that one and challenge your thinking on it in terms of, the impact on your business. So there are 5 main categories where, employers have issues with their staff. The first one, I think, is a poor definition of the employment relationship. So, they haven't set clear expectations and roles and responsibilities for their staff. The terms of the relationship are not clear. The second one is underperformance, that perhaps the employer feels that the staff are not meeting their expectations in terms of output to the business. The third one is misconduct. Yeah, that's the persistent timekeeping offences, the bad attitude, playing the system with the expense claims. They're your misconduct issues. That you're not prepared to accept that it's time to make changes. That maybe you're too comfortable with the way that things have always been done, and it feels scary to make changes. And the fifth one, which is often the trickiest one, is that you need to end relationships that no longer serve you. So, are there passengers, on your train that should be left at the next stop? I know that that's tricky, and particularly when times are hard. I know as employers, they're not just employees, they're not just numbers, they're people that you employ. and you provide a livelihood to them and their families. So, you know, I can appreciate that that's a tricky one sometimes to work your way through. So I often hear, well, the odds are stacked against us anyway. You know, that there are a raft of employment laws in place to protect employees. And I don't know if you've noticed, but this year there's a huge raft of information that's available online for employees, particularly around furlough and their rights and entitlements. It seems like everybody's become an expert on that subject now. You know, the ACAS website has a lot of free information. The government have been consistently issuing guidance on a regular basis. Google, you know, employment lawyers like us and HR specialists, you know, are all out there putting our articles and our content out there in terms of rights and responsibilities. You know, trade unions, we seem to be hearing more from them now. But there's also the friends, the colleagues, the relatives, you know, the Brenda in HR, the sister-in-law, you know, who make sure that your employees know their rights and you know, what they're entitled to. But what I would say is, don't let that overwhelm you. For starters, they don't always get it right. You know, they might have read a little bit of information, and sometimes a bit of information can be a dangerous thing. So I would say, you know, check the facts, and you know, if you're being told you can't do that, that's illegal, you know, well, check that out. Get your own advice on that. And also that it is possible as an employer to achieve your aims with an objective business case and a fair process. And really what I'm hoping to do with this webinar is, by the end of the webinar, I'm giving you some food for thought to plan out your business case and your fair process if you do need to make changes in the new year. So I'm hearing at the moment that business models have changed significantly over the last year. You know, lots of businesses are working from home now. You know, that they no longer need certain departments, and so potentially your business model may have changed significantly. And if that's the case, then you know, you might not have the right team in the right roles anymore. So over the break, you may want to kind of sit down with a blank piece of paper and draw out your dream structure. You know, what does that look like now? Have you got too many chiefs? Have you got too many Indians in the team, in terms of you know, your wider workforce? You know, if you want to kind of assess what you actually need going forward, that may help your thinking in terms of what changes you need to make. Is it time to play musical chairs? You know, could you streamline some functions? So you may have a marketing team and a sales team. You know, could you potentially merge those and have one team that's sales and marketing? You know, have a think about the structure of your business and whether that still works for you, and whether it's now the right time to make some changes. What I would say is, if you are thinking about making changes to your business, then please plan your process, because it's really important that, you know, if you're looking to fundamentally change people's roles in your organization, that's a different process to if you're just wanting to tweak some duties and add some additional responsibilities. So, you know, you need to know the distinction and the difference between those two and what you have to do as a result. So, quite a few businesses are now scaling back as well. So those that perhaps had a larger workforce, you know, some business owners are stripping back to operating a consultancy model where, you know, it's just the business owners that are employed in the business, and they're using flexible labour. So, you know, they're bringing in subcontractors when they need them. You know, they're perhaps letting go their full-time employees and, you know, pulling on agency workers or 0-hour staff, just so that they can flex according to the demands of the business. So perhaps over Christmas, it's the time to review your requirements and your terms that you have with staff that you work with. But what I would say is, don't think that employing flexible workers is the way forward in terms of avoiding employment rights. You have to be careful of the rights that you didn't realise they had, in terms of holidays and sickness and you know, their employment status. Just because you call them self-employed doesn't necessarily mean that they are. So I'd also be careful if you are looking to offer your existing staff a change in the nature of the relationship that you have with them, that you don't inadvertently continue their employment. So there are strict rules about breaks in service between different arrangements in order to break their continuous service and their employment status. So that's something to think about, but just make sure that you do it properly. Is it too much to ask them to do their job? Yes, this has been a common one, and I think furlough has been helpful to businesses, but it's also been a huge source of frustration as well. And I get that. It's a really unsettling time for everybody involved. And there has been a sense of employees being fearful of going to work, the working arrangements that the employer wants them to adhere to, and it's created a lack of clarity really, in terms of the employer's expectations of what they want their employees to do. I would say communication's key here. So it's really important to check that you've told your employees clearly what you require of them. And it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to be superheroes all the time and just battle on and mutter in silence to yourself, that it's not fair and they should be doing this and not me, and why am I doing their job? Actually, if they're not furloughed, and you can look at flexible furlough and have people back as little as 2 hours a week if you need it. But if you need someone to do a job for you, then talk to them about it and give them notice that you want them on flexible furlough, and be really clear about what your expectations are. It's a really important time, I think, as well, to think about refreshing your employment documents. So what we found is that over the last year, certain terms have been missing from contracts of employment. So, for example, working from home clauses, and also flexible working, flexi time, things like that. The right to ask employees to take their holidays, that might have been helpful for some employers over the past year. And so you might have identified that over the last year, you've been trying to sort of play catch up and almost say, yes, you're bound by your contract of employment, but yeah, we didn't put these bits in. And it might be a time to kind of refresh those for the new year going forward to make sure that they're fit for purpose. You might want to have a look at job descriptions as well. People's roles may have evolved, and maybe, as people have stepped into the breach, they've taken on additional roles and responsibilities. And so maybe the job descriptions that they had this time last year don't apply. So I think it might be helpful to kind of clarify the framework of your expectations to staff. Similarly, your employee handbook, how you do things at your place, the policies and procedures that govern how you operate as an employer. So you might want to have a look at your policies there, in terms of clarifying what your expectations are. It's always a good time to have a bit of a spring clean of your employment documents anyway, and get them in order in January. So I really do feel for business owners at the moment, and the people managers, that are there at the helm, trying their best to keep their business afloat, and it's really challenging when you feel that some of your staff perhaps don't care about the business as much as you do, and I hear employers expressing frustration about that. That they're the ones that aren't able to access the government grants. They're the ones that are showing up every day, that are trying to keep everything together, and particularly with furlough, that in some ways it's understandable that employers can feel a bit resentful of that they can't furlough themselves, that they've got to crack on, and that employees are sat at home on full pay, and they're just taking it easy, but actually I believe it is stressful to be on furlough. I think that it can be unsettling, and I don't think it's the laugh a minute that some people think it is. I happened to bump into somebody in Sainsbury's the other week, and I almost didn't recognise the guy, and he's been on furlough for 6 months, and he was pasty, and he'd been clearly drinking. And I think sometimes we have to take a step back and recognise that this is tough for everybody, and that doesn't mean that you have to deny your feelings, as a manager in the business. But think about, why do you think that your staff don't care about the business? Is it fact or assumption? And actually, you can turn it round. This might be your opportunity to ride the sleigh instead of, being the Grinch, and think about how you can reconnect with your staff. And actually, just communicating with them can break down that us and them divide, and it could make them feel better. It could make you feel better. Give them some clear direction and leadership and comfort. That we've got a plan for the next year, and we've all survived it together up to this point. Try and bring your team together, align them, get them to commit to a common cause for the new year. Remind them, what you stand for. I think that will boost morale and loyalty within your team, and also make them feel part of something special, and they'll care more. Why do I have to keep stroking their egos? So again, are you being a Grinch? I think it is important to value your people. People will do more if they feel appreciated as well. So there is something in it for you. I think it's important to acknowledge their contribution. So tell them, that some people have been working under really, really difficult conditions this year. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and thank them, for what they're doing for the business. Show recognition, tell others what they've been doing. So, actually, it doesn't have to be some grand ceremony. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It can just be an acknowledgement that you've recognised that somebody's gone the extra mile, and you feel it's important to share that with the team. Incentivize and reward employees for their efforts. Again, it doesn't have to be financial. It could just be something that says, actually, do you know what? Why don't you just take the afternoon off and see if you can get some Christmas shopping in, or pick the kids up from school, on their last day of school today. You don't have to do some big grand gestures, and it doesn't have to be financial. But just think about it, that actually, are you really stroking their egos? Is that, again, coming from a place of bitterness and resentment that you're allowing yourself to get into? This is common, unfortunately. So I get it that sometimes employers believe that if the employees are all sat in front of them, that they're going to be more productive and more effective, and you can make sure that they're working their contractual hours. But I think the statistics have shown that home working has worked for a lot of businesses. And in fact, we've actually been told by Boris to work from home if you can. So that has been challenging for employers, particularly as they turn up in the office and look round at all the empty desks and feel resentful that they can't work from home, and they don't know what their staff are doing, and suspecting that they're probably going out for a walk with their friends. And yeah, I get it, but that comes down to trust. And actually, it's okay to ask employees to come into the office if you want to. Make sure you've got adequate health and safety measures in place. We do that. We get together in the office at least once a week to go through, strategy, how last week went, what we've got on the agenda for this week. And we feel that that's really important. We've also got trainees that work for us, as you know, so it's important to connect with the trainees to make sure that that they're being adequately supervised and monitored, and that they're progressing as they should be at this stage of their training. So it is okay to ask employees to come into work, but what I would say is make sure you've got adequate health and safety measures in place. If employees are working from home, communicate regularly. You could convince yourself that they're up to no good, or that they're laying in bed watching Loose Women, but actually, why don't you just pick up the phone and message them, or ring them up, or set up Zoom calls, where you can actually kind of check in with them and assign them some tasks that they can support you with. You can monitor their output. If you're that concerned about it, then maybe, now's the time to start time recording. It's different for our business because we're solicitors and we need to record our time so that, we can justify that when we bill the clients. So time recording is second nature for us. However, in your business, it might not be, but you might want to think about that. So I'm not saying, start stalking your staff and monitoring and recording everything they do. But actually, if you think that there is a problem with a particular employee that isn't pulling the weight, then call it out. And then it might be that they just need a little nudge in the right direction and to get back on track again. Particularly as we wind down towards the end of the year, it's easy to sort of start to switch off and as the workload drops off, then perhaps your productivity does too. They're incompetent. So we've had a little bit of a debate in the team about this mask, and so this mask is a unicorn. It's actually got a horn on the top of its head, but some of the team think that it's a chicken. But whatever you see, I think it was fitting for this slide. So if you're feeling that your staff are incompetent, you don't have an obligation to carry anybody. There's no room for passengers in any business. However, what I would say is challenge your thinking on that. Have you set your staff reasonable objectives? Have you provided reasonable support and training? Have you given them a reasonable timescale to improve? Is there evidence to back up the fact that you've conducted regular reviews with them? And if all of that is in place and you have given them the time to improve and then they're nowhere near where you need them to be, then there is a process to follow for a fair dismissal. So even if your thoughts are that I really can't put up with this incompetence anymore, just really dig into that and challenge your thinking in terms of whether they really are incompetent and whether you've done your bit in terms of helping develop them and bring them on. It costs so much more money and hassle to, find a replacement. So if you have got somebody that, can be turned around, that's already knows your business and what you expect of them, then I think it's worthwhile investing your time in seeing if you can turn that around first before you start looking elsewhere. They won't agree to any changes. Yes. So, I think when employees feel threatened, one of the first things that they commonly do is they ask for a copy of their contract, and they might come back to you with lots of questions, particularly if they haven't signed it, because you didn't force them to sign it. You didn't sit there when they were offered the job and they didn't accept the job by signing and returning the contract of employment. So at some point later down the line, you've issued the contract but not bothered chasing to get it signed. And so you will get employees that will say, oh, well, I don't accept these terms because, I didn't sign this contract. And it's often a source of debate between employers and employees, particularly when employers want to make changes as to whether they're able to do that in accordance with the contract. You can change terms and conditions of employment. You can implement pay freezes. You could implement pay cuts if you need to. You can, change the rules on commission. You can, change the rules on bonuses if your contract allows that. So a well-drafted contract will say whether things are discretionary. Sometimes they'll say that the commission structure can be changed according to the needs of the business. But more importantly, even if your contract doesn't have those things, you can speak to staff and try and negotiate and agree changes to T's and C's. You've got to consult with them anyway. So step one is speak to the staff and say, look, we're thinking that in order to avoid redundancies, we want to implement a 10% pay cut across this particular team. Your staff may say, yeah, okay, and we'll agree to that. And then if they agree to it, you can then put that in place as soon as you like. Alternatively, if they don't agree to it, what you can do is make sure you've got your strong business case for why you need to do this pay cut, and you would have to give them all their minimum contractual notice entitlement, or statutory if that's greater, which is 1 week for each year of service, and then impose the change after that. So let me give you an example. You've got an employee with 3 years service. You need to impose a 10% pay cut on them. You'd consult with them. They say no. You then say, unfortunately, according to the needs of the business, we do need to do this. So I'm giving you 3 weeks notice, even if the contract says that they're only entitled to 1 week's notice. I'm giving you 3 weeks notice on the basis that you've got 3 years service. And in 3 weeks and 1 day's time, your new rate of pay will be 10% less. So it's really important that, you can make those changes. Don't just force them on them, without notice, without consulting with them first. But, speak to us if you want some advice on how to do that. There isn't enough work to do. Yeah, this is common. So quite a few businesses, are dependent on the furlough scheme. And I think that, they breathed a sigh of relief that those redundancy programs that they planned for November were then put back on the back burner again until, the end of March and April because of the furlough scheme. My thoughts on that are that you need to consider whether that's a sticking plaster. Could you really reduce your payroll overheads and still achieve the same work volumes? Are you just putting off an issue for a couple of months that you need to deal with sooner than that, really? Even though employees are on furlough, it's not free to you. There are still ongoing costs that you have to pay. They're accruing additional holidays, they're accruing additional service. So potentially, when you do need to make some difficult decisions, they may be entitled to more than they would if you dealt with the issues now. So, have a look at whether you could streamline some of your teams and redistribute some of the duties amongst the team. Look at the span of control that each manager has, for example. Do employees have capacity to do more? So here's the flip side. So if there's not enough work, see if you can find some more work. Maybe put your efforts into, a marketing initiative. What's your bread and butter? How can you easily generate some work relatively quickly? Or do those jobs that normally linger on the bottom of the to-do list. That put your staff to work, and they'll feel useful, and you'll maybe get some of those jobs ticked off. Can't we just make them redundant? Well, sometimes employers ask this question when really they want to avoid dealing with another issue that they've got with that particular employee. Perhaps they've got a bad attitude. Perhaps they think that, they're playing the system on furlough, and, that they're being lazy, or they're claiming that, they don't want to come to work because they're fearful of, COVID, or that they're shielding elderly relatives. And perhaps the employer doesn't feel that that's genuine. It's a really tricky situation. It's a fine line to walk, that one. But, they say, well, can't we just make them redundant, as if that's the easy solution? But really, you have to question yourself whether it is a genuine redundancy situation. And the question you ask is, would I need to replace this role, if this person left the business? And if the answer is yes, then the role's not really redundant. So identify the real reason why you're feeling frustrated and follow the correct process that's associated with that. Redundancy is a statutory definition where you need less employees to carry out work of a particular kind, or you're closing down a branch, or a team. So you've got to carry out meaningful consultation, and you've got to have objective selection criteria in place as well. So let's say that you want to make employee number 1 redundant, and employee number 2 does exactly the same job as employee number 1. And if they went through a scoring process, the one that you'd want to keep would have the lowest score, and so objectively they should be the ones to go. Then you're really on a sticky wicket if you're trying to force out employee number 1. Why do they keep leaving? So it is a two-way thing. So some employees are hanging on in there because the job market is challenging at the moment, but there are some industries where the workforce is leaving in droves because it's a workers' market, and they can just walk into another job elsewhere. And so, particularly in transport, for example, or IT, we're finding this issue where employees, there's a high turnover of staff. My first suggestion is ask them why they're leaving. It might be that there's a lack of confidence in the business that they work for, and a lack of communication. So perhaps question whether you actually need to reassure your staff that everything's okay, that you're in control, and that they're okay, so that they don't feel the need to wobble and walk away to one of your competitors. Manage the end of the employment relationship with dignity. I've had a couple of managers that have had a few choice words to say to employees, that they've been paying them furlough pay for a period of time, and then the employee's handed the notice in and is going elsewhere, and that there's been a level of resentment in terms of, blimmin' it, well, for everything we've done for you over the last 6 months, and and this is how you thank us. And you've got to just avoid that. You've got to move past that. You've got to end the employment relationship with dignity. And actually, you don't know everybody's individual personal circumstances, and it's much better to say, well, what could we have done differently, and we are sorry to leave you go, and don't leave a sour taste in your mouth or theirs. Just one point on that though, do check your exit provisions to protect your business. So check whether you've got a training fees tie-in. So if you've trained somebody up over the last year, and then they leave within a certain period of time after the training, sometimes you can put a clause in the contract that says that they'll owe a proportion of the training fees back to you. Have a look at your confidentiality provisions, any restrictive covenants. If you believe there's a risk to your business in terms of them poaching your clients, for example, or poaching other employees to leave your business. So it might be worthwhile reminding certain people that are leaving that that those obligations continue post termination. Okay, so whatever your issues are, deal with it. Unresolved issues, yours and your employees, that you're allowed to fester, can really, really be detrimental to your business. If you've got disciplinary issues where you believe that somebody's committing an act of misconduct, deal with it. Don't wait until they come back off furlough in 3 months' time. Deal with your disciplinary issues. If employees have raised grievances, deal with them, put them to rest. Investigate them properly. Give a thought out response to them. Don't just park them, put them to one side. Absence. If you're finding that people are on long-term sick, or that there are persistent attendance or absence issues, then deal with those, find out what's going on, have a look whether you need to get some medical evidence to support your staff. It might be that through communication you could perhaps reassure your staff that you have adequate health and safety measures in place, and that might allay their fears and make them feel more comfortable about coming back to work. Performance, nobody has a job for life anymore, and that it's reasonable for you to expect people to perform and to do their jobs properly. So if you've got performance issues, deal with it, but don't wait until you're so frustrated that you can't stand the sight of somebody. Manage your process now, make sure they're clear about what you expect of them, you've given them adequate support, and you're managing it properly. So even after all of this, you might be thinking, well, yes, I have got an issue, and yes, it is really bugging me, and yes, I'm going to give it some thought, and I'm going to plan out my process, and I'm going to look at my risk assessment and how much it's going to cost for me to deal with this. But in the back of your mind, there might be a little voice that's saying, shall I just give them one more chance? And if that's the case, great. Communication is key here, whilst you've got a relationship with them. So talk to them now while they're still in employment and hopefully still at work, that they haven't gone off with work-related stress. But actually, if you then consider that and you think the relationship has irretrievably broken down, just see if whether the mediation might help, or get some advice on whether you have a protected conversation, which is an off-the-record conversation where you propose the termination of their employment on agreed terms. So, there are other options other than just going through your formal process. And what I would say is that, if you can kind of tackle your issues whilst they remain in employment, you've got a better chance of resolving them than after their employment's ended, and there's a risk of entrenchment in positions. So what do you want to achieve in 2021? Revisit your vision for the business, evaluate your people requirements. So what that means is, if you think that next year we're going to, close 5 of our branches, then your people requirements will be that you may not need as many staff, because the people that work in those 5 branches may not have jobs, or you may want to transfer them to your remaining branches. So you need to kind of think, what do I want to achieve? And then secondly, what impact does this have on my workforce? Work out what you're no longer prepared to put up with in 2021. What have you tolerated that actually makes your teeth itch? What are you not prepared to put up with anymore? And what I would say is, if you can kind of give yourself the headspace to, put down your initial thoughts in terms of, I really want to change these things because we put too many workarounds in place, too many sticking plasters, and actually let's just do it properly now. Maybe you have no performance management process in place at all. People aren't told what the expectations are. They don't have clear job descriptions. We certainly don't have any one-to-ones with them. We have no reward and recognition process. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's something that's aspirational, that's bugged you for years. Or maybe it's actually, it's time to get rid of that moaning mini, and that they're not adding any value, and we've created a role for them because we're too afraid to deal with them because their husband's a trade union rep. It could be that. So whatever it is, work out what you're not prepared to put up with anymore and create a workable plan. And really what I mean by that is a plan for work that works for you. And this leads me on to, in January, I'm putting together a more practical workshop where we will literally work through the employment life cycle, and we'll basically work out what you need to consider, so that by the end of it, you'll have it could be a 12-week or 12-month plan for how you're going to improve HR in your business. So it's a free workshop, and you're more than welcome to register for that. What I will do is I'll probably start promoting that after Christmas, and then look out for the link and register for that. Actually, as a little bonus Christmas present, I will send you all, those of you that are watching this now, I will send you the link to register. And if you want to do that and you want to have a conversation with myself, Jane or Claire, in the first week of January, to talk about the thoughts that you've put together as a result of this webinar, then that's on us. So that'll be your Christmas present. So you can then just kind of reply to the email that I'll send you this afternoon. Just say yes please, and we'll set up a time to have a chat about creating a workable plan for you. So that's it really. So our aim as ever is to make HR workable for employers. I had an employee complaining to one of my clients yesterday that they'd read my blogs and I was far too biased and unbalanced, and yes I am. I feel that yes, there are people out there that support employees and are very touchy-feely and pro-employee. I'm just on the other side of that. I'm pro-employer because I can see that it's not easy managing people. It's not easy, when you've got all the burdens of running the business and you've got to pay the overheads, and, lots of times you're busy in your business, just trying to make whatever product or service that you offer. And sometimes you miss issues that are going on in your business and you're not aware that employees have been taking advice from ACAS for 18 months, as was the case with the employee yesterday. So yeah, I'm on your side, and my team are too. So if you need any help or support, you've got our contact details there. So yes, I'm going to allow my lovely team to come back in again. And if we've had any questions, let's have a look. No, we've got no open questions, so I think they've been answered, so thank you. So thank you very much. I'll send you the email this afternoon with the link to take advantage of your free consultation. And I hope you all have a lovely, lovely Christmas, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the new year. Take care.